My name is John Gilroy, and the title of the presentation is Ignite Your Career: How to Combine Face-to-Face Networking with Social Media. This presentation had its origins at Georgetown University. I teach in the graduate school there. Typical environment, walk into a room and 19 students, they're all smarter than me. They're very, very good with technology, but very weak with face-to-face communications. Let me give you an example. I had a student who walked up to me and said, trying to get a job at Dell, this particular job, can you help me? And I said, well, just go to your network and see if someone can help you. And he said, well, I don't have a network. I said, oh, poor fella, 30 years old and doesn't have a network. So I went to my network. Turns out that I know a vice president over at Dell. I made a call. The young man got the job. Everyone wins. The next semester, I had a student come up to me and said, I'm trying to find this particular job at Deloitte. And I said, well, find someone in your network. And they said, I don't have a network. So I went to my network, and it turns out that I know a director at Deloitte, Dr. Harry Greenspun. I was about to call him. Then it dawned on me, what kind of a teacher am I? I'm not teaching him how to fish. And besides, what happens if I get hit by a bus? They're not going to learn anything. So I decided to put together a workshop on face-to-face networking. So I called up the dean, Dr. Beverly Magda, and I said, hey, Bev, I need a room. What for? I want to get 30 students in a room in 4 companies and lock the door and not let anyone leave until they exchange business cards. Great idea. I had the event, I had 75 students show up. It was very, very well received. In fact, companies in the Washington, D.C. area invited me to come in and do workshops for them. That's why I wound up giving this presentation at the Project Managers Group about a month ago. And the reason I'm recording this today is for the benefit of the people in the PMI Washington, D.C. who didn't get a chance to see the live presentation. So we have the background of the presentation. What about the structure? This is the easy 4-part structure, nothing to it. First part, we're talking about the fears that people have when it comes to face-to-face networking. Then we're going to talk about the 5 pillars of face-to-face networking that can overcome those fears. The next section is how to improve your LinkedIn profile. And then finally, we're going to talk about what not to do in a face-to-face networking environment. So we have the origins, we have the structure of the presentation. Let's start and talk about an event that I went to about a year ago. It happened in Arlington, Virginia, a place called Roslyn. Roslyn is a bunch of high buildings that have rooftops that look over all the monuments in Washington, D.C. September evening a year ago, I was invited to a cybersecurity event there, outside on top of a building on a roof. Look out and see all the monuments. It was spectacular. I was having a very animated conversation with a gentleman by the name of Eugene Kaspersky, and he was telling me the only thing he needs in life is an apartment and a BMW. Well, I thought that was a little superficial, but hey, if that goes for him, that's fine. Now, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed there was a gentleman standing there with a suit and tie on. Now, I've been to many, many, many events with software developers. I hardly ever see anyone with a suit and tie on. So I said, Eugene, may you please excuse me? I'm going to go over and talk to this gentleman. I walked over and I said, hi, my name is John Gilroy. I'm with the Welcome Wagon. How are you? He said, hello. His name was Jeff Goodale. Remember that name, Jeff Goodale. Well, tell me, Jeff, you certainly don't look like a software developer. He said he's not. He's an attorney. I said, wow, an attorney. What kind of an attorney? Oh, I deal in IP law. He said, intellectual property for antivirus, for security. That makes perfect sense. May I have a business card? Yeah. Then he said, can I have a card? Sure. I said, well, Jeff, tell me more. He started talking about his background, about his specializations, and the fact that he spoke Russian. I said, oh, I'm starting to connect the dots. You speak Russian. I've got it. I have a student over there who's from Russia. I motioned the student to come over and I said, you should speak with Jeff and practice your Russian. Great. They were in a conversation and I stepped away. I said, excuse me, I'm going to get a club soda. That little 2-minute story encapsulates many, many of the aspects of face-to-face networking that I want to convey to the audience here this evening. So think about that story as I'm rolling through here, telling bad jokes and bad illustrations, but think about that rooftop in Arlington, looking out over the monuments and the Russians there, and the face-to-face networking opportunities that I had and that you were probably going to have in the next event you go to. So that's the story on the East Coast. Let's switch coasts. Let's go to the West Coast, go to California. If you've ever been to Monterey, California, you know this is right off the pier in Monterey, a whole bunch of seals. Now, when you see these seals on TV, they look great. Up close and personal, though, you walk out on that pier, they are loud and they are stinky. Whew! It dawned on me, that's what most people think of face-to-face networking. Loud and stinky. So I got down the pier, I got my camera, and I was about to take the picture. My wife said, "What are you taking a picture of?" I said, "I'm taking a picture of face-to-face networking." She said, "You are out of your mind." And I said, "Yeah, I hear that all the time." I took this picture because it does indicate a little bit about face-to-face networking. People are a little uncomfortable, they're comfortable, they like it, they don't like it, the push and pull all over the place. One word that you could use to describe this is a word that I normally don't use, but many people use, and the word is yucky. That is a yucky pier. It is terrible smelling. When it comes to the word yuck, it maybe describes some networking situations. In doing my research for this presentation, I found a band in Australia by the name of Alpine, and they have a new album called Yuck. Just like that, Yuck. Here's a picture of the group. There are 6 people in this group, and what a coincidence. There are 6 fears that many people have when it comes to face-to-face networking. I'd like to take each one of these fears, each one of these individuals, and talk with you about them and how you can overcome these individual fears. The first one's the guy in the blue shirt, and that fear is, "I'm shy." "Hey, would you like to go to this networking event?" "No, I'm afraid I'm shy." Well, there's nothing wrong with being shy. There's a woman named Susan Cain. She's recently written a book called Quiet, The Power of an Introvert. She says that 35% of Americans are introverts. There's nothing wrong with being introverts. Many times they're in careers that involve actuarial science, perhaps software development, many times analysis. They tend to be very introspective and thoughtful. We need those type of people. There's nothing wrong with that. What you have to do is you have to overcome that basic tendency if you want to secure a network to protect your job and protect your career. Talked about my wife earlier. One time when my daughter was in Girl Scouts, she had to sell a bunch of these cookies. So my wife took a bunch of the boxes of cookies, put them in the trunk of the car, and after church on Sunday, opened up the trunk and said to people, "Get your Girl Scout cookies here." She sold them all out. I learned 2 things that afternoon. Number 1, Girl Scout cookies are like crack cocaine. Number 2, I found a whole new aspect of my wife's personality I had never seen before. So I approached her and I said, "Where's this carnival barker come from?" And she said, "John, sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it." So that's lesson number 1. When it comes to being shy, you may be shy, and there's nothing wrong with that. What you must do is fake it till you make it. This protects your income, this protects your career, gives you the best possibility for promotion in the long term and the short term as well. So number 1, I'm shy. Fake it till you make it. Number 2, this guy in this kind of a red shirt, and he may say, "Well, you know, I'm kind of socially awkward. I don't fit well in situations at all. I'm just not there at all." So you may think, well, you may be socially awkward, you may not fit in, but there's nothing wrong with being conscious about yourself, nothing wrong with being self-conscious. In fact, it's an admirable trait. I once worked with a guy named Whit Ronaldo, and he was not very self-conscious at all. One day he showed up for work and his shoes didn't match. So it wasn't very self-conscious. So it's good to be self-conscious to make sure you're presented well. However, what you must become in order to become a good networker is you have to become other conscious. You have to be conscious of the other person. For example, in the networking environment in Arlington I talked about. I was speaking to Kaspersky, but I was thinking about the person over there who was standing all alone, maybe someone who's lost, someone who's confused. What you have to do is bring that person into the environment. I've lived overseas for a year, and I know what it's like to be an outsider or a foreigner. I always try to bring them into the party, make sure they're part of the conversation. So number 1, I'm shy. Number 2, I'm self-conscious. Number 3, stranger danger. Yeah. Well, I have 2 daughters, and there's no doubt there are bad guys out there in bad situations. And I want to be very protective. And if you choose your battles well, you don't have to worry about strangers. Now, you can go into certain areas where it's very dangerous. However, most networking events that professionals attend, it's no problem at all. For example, if you're down at the Ron Reagan building at 9 o'clock in the morning with a group of 200 software developers, well, chances are that's a very, very safe environment. Don't have to worry about strangers there at all. So pick and choose your battles, and you don't have to worry about being in awkward situations or difficult situations with strangers. So that's the first one is I'm shy. The second one I'm self-conscious. The third one is stranger danger. Number 4 is the guy in the blue shirt in the back, and that is, Hey, you want to come to an event? I feel like I'm being manipulated. What do you mean? The only time I hear from Gilroy is when he wants something. I'm sick of going to those events. I feel like I'm being manipulated. Does that resonate? It sure does. It resonates with me. Well, the people in this room, the project managers, are very familiar with hourly billing and controlling time for different projects. What you have to do is you have to view yourself as a project. You have to say, okay, I'm going to join the PMI chapter in Washington, D.C., and I'm going to spend 4 hours a month with that chapter, and that's it. Or 4 hours a week, and that's it. Or whatever amount of time you delegate for that particular group. As long as you have the discipline for that, then you will not be manipulated. In fact, the only way to be manipulated is if you allow yourself to be manipulated, which happened to me, and I'll share a story with you. 2 years ago, I was with a company called Armature, and the CEO set up a target as healthcare IT. Go after healthcare IT. We dealt in the area of accreditation and compliance. So I looked around the area, I said, there's a group called Healthcare Informatics, HIMSS, and they have a meeting in Roslyn, by the way. I attended the meeting, there were 60 people there. I walked up to the president and said, Healthcare IT, this is white hot. You should have 200 people here. He said, I'd love to have 200 people. I said, may I help? Why, sure. I do a weekly radio show called Federal Tech Talk with John Gilroy. And what I suggested was, let's get your next speaker on my show before the event. We'll talk about the event on the radio, then we'll promote the event with blogs, tweets, and LinkedIn status updates. You'll get a lot of people that way. The first time we did it, we got 200 people. Every time I had a guest in the studio, we had 200 people show up at his event. It was very, very beneficial for him. At the end of the year, I turned to the president and said, my company's involved in healthcare IT in the area of compliance and accreditation. I would appreciate any referrals you could give me. He said, we'll do everything we possibly can to help. He did nothing. The next year, started off in September, I was working for a different company, started working for BLT, the company I work for today. BLT worked with Salesforce integration projects. So I went up to the president of HIMSS and I said, hey, I'm working for BLT. I would appreciate any referrals for companies that have projects involved in integrating SharePoint into other systems. He said, great, we'd love to help you. Had guests in the studio, promoted, a lot of people showed up. Guests in the studio, promoted, worked fine. At the end of the year, I approached him and said, well, I've helped you a whole lot, haven't I? How's that worked out? It worked out great. I said, well, I haven't gotten any phone calls from you for referrals. What's going on? Oh, we'll do everything we possible to help. Well, what I said, look, here's what I'm going to have to do. I want to help HIMSS out. I sincerely want to. What I'm going to have to do is reprioritize my guests. I've done 420 interviews. I have 420 people that want to come back in the studio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to prioritize my previous guests and other people, and then when I have an opening or cancellation, I'll give you folks a call. Well, that was a situation where I know how to manipulate and how I was being manipulated, but they were controlling me, and it put me in a bad situation. So if you can control yourself the way you control a project, you can control this whole worry about manipulation. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The fifth fear that people have is a real simple fear is, I have nothing to say. Would you like to come to this event with me? No, why not? I have nothing to say. Well, having nothing to say is an advantage. It's a great advantage. What you want to do is you want the other person to talk. That's what networking is all about. What you should do is you arm yourself with a half a dozen open-ended questions that you could ask someone at an event. How are you? Is this your first time at the event? Is there someone in this room you would like to meet? Open-ended questions. How can I help you? These are open-ended questions that people can use for networking. So if you say you have nothing to say, that's great. Let the other person talk. You can always learn more. And finally, the number 6 person here when it comes to face-to-face networking, the number 6 fear is, what if I get rejected? Oh, well, let me tell you something. If you walk into an event and raise your hands in the air and say, hey, I'm the greatest, what will happen is you will be rejected. If you use some of my suggestions that I'm giving you today, then you'll be very successful in any networking opportunity you encounter. And these suggestions are, make eye contact, ask questions, be helpful. Don't talk about yourself, talk about someone else. The 6 fears of face-to-face networking.